Hi guys, I'm Shmee. Hello and welcome back to the channel where you join me today for a complete and thorough induction tour to my newest car, the Mercedes-Benz SLS AMG Black Series. We are going to go top to bottom, inside out, through the engine bay, the interior, all the details. Everything that, for example, you might have been told as an owner of one of these cars during the delivery, the original handover, plus all of the things that I've worked out about it so far. I guarantee there are going to be things about this car that you didn't previously know that today we will fully explore, just as in the past I have done with the Senna and also with the Ford GT. It's a permanent Shmee-mobile, now in Mystic Blue, but let's go through it then, a full tour of the SLS AMG Black Series. Prepare then for an overload of information about this car, just like I did in the past with the other Shmee-mobiles. Because it's just had the respray at Chartwell into my choice of Mystic Blue, it's going to be heading next to Topaz Detailing to get paint protection film installed. So in the meantime, I'm not driving it out and about, but I will tell you everything I know about it. And I think really we should begin with a little bit of the backstory of the SLS itself, the SLS and even AMG. Now, of course, this car is the spiritual successor to the 1950s 300 SL Gullwing, one of the most beautiful classic cars of all time, and also one of the most popular, I think it's fair to say as well. The SLS AMG, when it was launched at the Frankfurt Motor Show in 2009, the regular car, not the Black Series, was the first project by AMG in-house. Of course, they had created the more hardcore versions of Mercedes-Benz vehicles up to that point, but the SLS AMG was all AMG. At the time, it had the most powerful, naturally aspirated production series engine, the M159 6.2 litre NA-V8, the SLS making 571 horsepower, makes even more in this. We'll take a look at the engine bay quite shortly as well. The Black Series is one of a number of different versions that came along the way. There was the SLS AMG Gullwing, with the Gullwing doors that open up, and the Roadster. There have also been a few other different iterations, but the Black Series for AMG has always been their truly hardcore cars, the most track-focused performance variants, starting with the SLK 55 Black Series, the CLK 63, the SL 65, the C63, and the SLS, well, just the SLS Black Series, not with a number, this one. And in the future, hopefully the GT Black Series as well. The SLS Black Series, though, there are only about 350 of them in total. The number isn't officially confirmed ever at any point, but those journalists who were at the original press launch held at Paul Ricard back in 2013 when the car was launched were told 350, and I believe that is about the number that have ended up being produced. There was one original factory car in this colour, in Mystic Blue. This is, of course, a respray job that's been done to my car, but it was originally in Himalaya Grey. Mystic Blue is an original Mercedes-Benz Designo paint colour, available on the G63, and one I considered as well for my new generation G63, but it's always been one of my favourites. And you can see it here, that dark, almost purple tint that you see in the colour, and when you come under the bright lights, it just gets really bright blue as well. I think it looks particularly incredible. As we walk around it then, the Black Series, quite significantly different to the regular SLS. They took a lot of learnings from the SLS AMG GT3 race car that had been immensely successful, winning the Nürburgring 24 Hours, the Dubai 24 Hours, and plenty of other races along the way. So in terms of the chassis, the suspension and the dampers and that side of things, the driving dynamics very much focused on track usage. When you look at the car, it is also significantly wider. In fact, on the front axle, it is 13 millimeters wider on each side, and at the rear, it is 26 millimeters wider on each side. It is 5 centimeters wider at the back than the standard SLS. To put that into perspective, for a hardcore version of a car, that is a lot. You don't normally have quite that much of an increase in terms of the sheer width of it, and that is, of course, to house the wider wheels and tyres set up to give it a little bit more grip. Now, the big thing about the SLS, of course, are the Gullwing doors, and we'll just open those up very quickly. So to grab the key, when you unlock the car, the door handles pop out. Press the button, that slides out, give it a pull like a normal door handle, lift it up, and of course you are greeted by the interior. The performance sports bucket seats that you have inside, two-seater cabin, of course, and a car very much focused again. Alcantara on all of the main surfaces, carbon fibre as well for the interior trim, plus a few options that I've actually added to the specification of mine as well. We will go through this in more detail, but of course the gull-wing doors opening up like this, a tribute to the 300 SL from back in the 50s, such an iconic design feature that the car always had, and also quite a practical one, which a lot of people don't really consider. The amount of width that it requires to open a door in a parking space, let's say, like this, is actually much narrower than you would think. Perhaps even than in that kind of space, if that's all you had available, you wouldn't be able to open a traditional door at all. And obviously no risk of hitting any curbs. The only risk is that you might hit a very low ceiling if you were to have one at the very top. But I do think still even this height is below the roof line of my G63, so not particularly too much of a problem. Obviously a very special thing. Now, something a lot of people are curious about is if the car was to roll over, if let's say you were involved in an incident where the car flipped, it actually has some pyrotechnics to explode the doors off. In here, there are two on each side to literally explode the hinges away so that the doors fly off the car so that you don't get trapped in it, which is, well, I guess, engineering to make sure that works and passes all the legislation and that side of things. But very clever, and I guess a fun feature as well, to know that if you were to roll over, these doors would literally explode off the car. Visually, there are a number of other features that are different about the Black Series to the regular SLS. Of course, it has the extraordinarily long bonnets. They all have that because they're housing that engine behind the front axle, a front mid-engine layout, which is what makes it quite so brilliant to drive. In the case of the Black Series, you have this carbon piece here, of course, with airflow, as you can imagine, coming out from underneath. Also down at the front, you've got a much lower front splitter. Also the aero pack. This was an option for the car to have these carbon flicks at the sides, but also around the rear. Of course, the carbon add-ons that you can see all around that front area as well. The very distinct front grille, the horizontal slat running all the way through, the Mercedes emblem in the very centre. Coming around the side, one of my favourite design features is actually this large carbon fibre piece that you can see again for airflow out from inside, but a significantly large and quite uniquely designed feature that you don't often see. They all have the silver fuel filler cap, of course an exclusive wheel set for this car that's gone on to be used in other AMG models since. And then around the back, you have the fixed aerofoil, the fixed large spoiler at the very back. The normal SLS actually had an active aerofoil that would pop up out of the boot lid. And then of course down here, you've got those traditional quad exhaust tailpipes housed inside the carbon fibre diffuser as well at the very back. Of course, I bought this car from Schalke over in Germany. I imported a left-hand drive German car. I'm going to be using the car on road trips, on tours, taking it over to the USA. So for me, left-hand drive makes sense. It's also substantially cheaper than buying one of the very, very rare right-hand drive cars as well. So for me, as a car that I want to drive and use, it made much more sense overall. Now let's come round to the driver's side to pop open the engine bay and take a look at that glorious power plant. And we'll go through some of the spec options as well. So here in the driver's footwell, we have the catch for the bonnet. Give that a pull. It is a gigantic bonnet made from carbon fibre. And then at the very front, you have the latch to lift up and reveal that work of art. The V8 in the SLS sits so far back in the engine bay, you can actually see it is behind the front axle, of course helping with weight distribution and driving dynamics. In this car, it is the codename M159, the 6.2 litre naturally aspirated V8. They're often confused with being 6.3 litres due to Mercedes-Benz's naming designations, but they are 6.2s. There's a differentiator of the Black Series engines. If you have a look here, the one-man, one-engine plaque, of course, they're built by AMG in a Fulterback. In the Black Series cars, they are black plaques, as opposed to the more traditional silver plaques that the cars would wear. While we're under here, you can see the bonnet, the exposed carbon fibre weave of the entirety of that. Now, in the Black Series, of course, it's been reworked. It still has the 7-speed speed shift dual clutch transmission, and also it has a higher red line. But power goes up from the standard SLS's 571 horsepower, up 60 horsepower in this car to 631. Torque does actually decline slightly from 650 newton meters down to 635, but I don't think you're going to notice that with all of the power going to the rear wheels, and of course the car capable of the 0 to 100 km/h sprint in just 3.4 seconds. Also, So in here, there's one option that this car doesn't have that you could order, which was to have carbon fibre engine covers up the sides and around the front. It's quite an expensive option, and due to them actually being extra parts, of course they don't replace anything that's here in existence at the moment, they do actually add a small bit of weight, so most cars don't really have them, although they do look very, very pretty. In the case of this, you can see the Mystic Blue parts of the frame of the car that have all been painted, part of the respray. We've got the battery, some fluids as well over the other side, and of course a whole lot of cooling here at the front, the air boxes sitting very prominently as well. So let's close this back down, give it a nice thud. Always get a little bit nervous, especially when you've got a freshly painted car as well. Now in terms of the colours for the car, there were 7 original options. I think the most famous was the launch colour, Solar Beam Yellow, one of my favourites. You could also of course get red, black, silver, white and a few others. As I mentioned, there is one other car in the world in Mystic Blue. It's actually a kind of 0 mileage car in the Middle East, so if you're wondering why I didn't buy that, it comes with a premium due to being 0 miles, and it would also incur additional VAT and duty to import it, so significantly more expensive than buying a car here in Europe. Now in terms of the interior, there were 2 original specification configurations. One, as you see here, the black Alcantara with a few red touches, the stitching on the steering wheel, the central tunnel, having the red seat belts and also the red piping on the floor mats. The other, basically the same, with a touch more red Alcantara on the dashboard and the central console. Now I do really like actually the red touches with the blue paintwork. I've had those colour combos on cars before and I always think it looks pretty good. One thing I did add though to this car is to have the carbon fibre side sills. Now those are quite a common option on many of them. This car didn't have them from new, so I bought the official factory parts to have them installed, although those will need PPF on them from Topaz, just to make sure they don't get scratched up, of course, as you swing your feet in, jump in and out of the car. Now talking about climbing over the width of the car, one thing that really emphasises how much wider the Black Series is than the standard SLS is this section you see outside of the headlights. On the regular car, it actually has the bodywork that curves straight around from the headlight towards the front arches. On this car, you can see it's quite a lot wider, and of course, as we said, the rear is over 5 centimetres wider than the standard SLS in total. That is quite a significant extra width. Other options for the car are quite few and far between. Having the satin black wheel finish was an option. Of course, the aero package with the flicks and the rear spoiler. And on the interior, you could have a car with Bang & Olufsen. This car doesn't. It was actually a €10,000 option to have the Bang & Olufsen sound system. But the interior has these seats which are very familiar to me. They've gone on to be in the AMG GTR and, of course, also in my GTR Pro. Very, very comfortable AMG sports bucket seats that really fit me very well. Seats are quite a personal thing, but these work absolutely perfectly for me. Now before we climb on board, quickly to show you the key here, a few buttons as you'd expect, lock, unlock, and also to open up the boot. I'll show you how the trickle charger and that side of things plug in back there, which is all quite cleverly designed. Inside though, obviously very focused, but let me take a step in, which is actually quite easy to do. These entries aren't as hard as you might think. Some people comment that it's difficult to reach the door handles up there on the gullwings, and some people even actually install having a drawstring or something to actually grab. I can just reach them okay, so that works fine for me, although I'm going to keep them up just for the moment because I think we should fire this into life. Obviously quite a focused dashboard. We've got a button here, it's keyless, so once to turn on the power, wake things up slightly, you get the needle sweep once more to fully turn on the ignition, then press the foot on the brake, press the button and bring it into life. Such a brilliant grumble. We didn't get a full cold start because I've had the car running a little bit just ahead, and you can see I'm on 6,700 miles with my car. It's actually quite warm considering the time of year, but this thing sounds so aggressive. And that's just how it sounds from factory. It has a titanium exhaust system doing the magical wonders on that front. But let me talk you, I guess, a little bit around the interior. You can actually replace the steering wheel with the newer design AMG wheels, and I might do that because this starts to look a little bit dated. Of course, it's functional, does what you'd expect to scroll through the different screens and displays and bits of information you might want out of it. I'm obviously here having the mile per hour reading. On the wheel itself then, just a few buttons, the paddle shifters on the back and your media controls over the other side. You've got things like your stalks for wipers and the like that you'd expect to find behind, light controls, obviously down here your electronic parking brake release. This is the physical button inside to open the tailgate, to open up the boot should you need to do that. What else do we have down below? Just the 2 pedals you'd expect dual clutch automatic gearbox. Then coming through to the central system, you've got the command infotainment. Of course, this starts to now look a little bit dated. The system that was introduced, well, over a decade ago, actually, back in 2009 or so. So as you would expect, it's a much smaller display than modern systems and not quite as, I guess, enhanced in terms of the graphics and display. But what it does do, as well as the normal options which you control through this toggle in the center, is have this AMG display. So if you press AMG, it opens AMG Performance Media. Of course, don't let it distract you from the traffic situation. Well, we're not exactly on a road at the moment. We are in my private storage, but here, as you can see, you have things like your temperatures, you've got the power charts, you can cycle to this. As well, there's a small lag, you have to wait for it, up to 631 horsepower, 635 newton meters. As you can see, it's interactive, it acts live, and then you can also bring up your tyre information, but you need to drive to get those recording. You can go up as well, because this toggle, as well as rotating, also can move up and down, has a range of movement to it, where you can go through a few different things. So you could even go into race, where you can load up a track, have your G meters, track driving, and time your 0 to 100 as well. Get some nice information out of this. As you can see, cycling through all of this, set your track info, and it will report that. You can also go to setup, where you can set up your active driving settings. Now the car does have a few settings. You've got the toggle here for your gearbox to go through Comfort, Sport, Sport Plus and Manual. I tend to like driving it in manual, using the flappy paddles on the gearbox as you would expect. You've got 2 stages on the suspension, softer, or the AMG Ride Control Sport Plus, but AMG Ride Control Sport is the standard mode. Then of course you've also got traction, which you can press, one press I think goes into sport handling mode, or you can press and hold it if you should wish to have it completely off and basically be a bit of a hooligan. So that's quite easy to do. I just put it back on as well at the end. Here you have things like a CD slot. Don't know if I have other cars with CD slots, to be honest. You've got some music controls, some functionality you'd expect. A mute button here, one press mute I always appreciate in a car, makes life a little bit easier. And then your climate control as well. To pop it on auto, set for very cold at the moment. Either independent or mono, obviously settings. Do exactly as you wish. Now back here is where it starts to get a little bit interesting. You have this slidey armrest. So how it's positioned at the moment, you actually have a little cubby hole back here. And in fact, I'm going to use my torch on the camera to show you this. You have this little secret cubby hole. You can press this and open it up, where you have key slot back there, but you also have the slot at the front of it to put the key in should for some reason it not function. So that's actually hidden away back there. And if you do close that and then slide this back, it's completely hidden, completely out of sight at the very back. Then in here we have 2 cup holders, just a spare battery at the moment, and the connection point I think for a telephone. All again quite easily done. You can press the button on either side to slide this and it will release and allow you to take it forwards and backwards. And you've got a small pouch back here. I guess if you want to pop something in, your maps or whatever. I'm not quite sure how I'd use that. In fact, there's a bit of a parcel shelf. You could probably stick some things back there, although I have to be very aware of them potentially sliding forwards. What else do we have? Over on the passenger side of the dash, I do like this, the AMG Black Series badge. Sorry, I should have the light back on still. I think that's a cool touch. Over on the Alcantara of the dashboard, small glove box, 12-volt socket over there as well, and this is the key back, because you can put on the back of the key the AMG crest. Also a sunglasses holder just here as well on the inside of the glove box. What else do we have then? Obviously no door pockets, no storage space on the doors, because obviously as you open them you'd promptly tip that out, but there is one more small storage bucket just here. Open this up, obviously, oh, I've got a is that a Euro that we've got in there? How lucky am I? And a 12-volt socket as well, just to make life easy in there. Yes, I guess that's pretty much the interior of the car. There isn't really that much to talk about, because this is a car that's focused for driving. Of course, Alcantara wheel, red 12 o'clock stripe is always cool as well to tie in with the rest of the interior. But that is, well, I guess mostly what I can tell you about the interior. Let's have a quick little listen, I suppose, to the proper grumble as it starts to warm up a little bit more. Enjoy this. If that isn't an epic sound, I don't know what else is. This car, and to think what it could be in the future, is insane. It's a proper old school, big, naturally aspirated engine. It is completely different to that one and that one. Obviously twin turbocharged engines, very aero-based cars. Not that this car doesn't have a lot of aero going on, but it's just old school power, European muscle, I think we could call it. Anyway, let me just shut that off and we go back to silence. It's actually got really quiet. Let me climb back out. It's not too hard again to do. You just got to kind of swing yourself and climb on out. Watch your head a bit so that you don't clobber this. You do notice there are these reflectors actually, front and back, for the doors, and just give them a drop down into place. Now to come back round to the rear, one thing you might have noticed about the back of this car, it does not have any badges on it. The reason for that is that the badges have to be put on top of the paint protection film. So if we put badges on it now, we would just end up having to take them off and basically buy new ones to have the double-sided backing already in place. But it will of course have the Mercedes star in the center. It will also have the SLS badge. By the way, SLS, if you're wondering, stands for Super Light Sport, or at least the German equivalents of Super Light Sport. It would have the AMG Black Series badge over on this side, which I do actually have to show you quickly. So inside some of these boxes, I've got the original mirror caps because I made the mirrors carbon fiber, and of course we have the original side sill in the Himalaya grey. Quite a light piece, it has to be said, but here you can see my change from grey to blue. I'm about colours. I mean, it doesn't take a genius when you look at this line to work out that I do quite like my colourful cars. This was a little bit too bland for me, which is why I decided to make the change to Mystic Blue, but cool to keep. Those will be part of the museum, the man cave in the future. Now to show you inside the boot of this, let's open it, press and hold the button just here. Obviously you have the carbon spoiler with this carbon underpiece as well. Lift this up, where we have quite an odd shaped boot, it has to be said. The boot, or the trunk if you're American, back here, has a few strange inserts and kind of, well, not the easiest, I guess, for a big case. Over to the right, I've got my trickle charger bag, bit of a storage pouch. You've got the instruction manual book that's strapped down. Behind that, you've got the telephone interface, I believe. Over to this side, we've actually got the badges. These are the AMG badges you can see. That's going to be going onto the back of the car, and the other badges are just inside that box as well that I had ordered. Then over this side, the trickle charger is very clever. You'll see we've got the lithium charger here. Lithium battery in this car, lighter weight than the standard traditional battery, but it has this magnetic release here. So if you want to put that away in the bag, nice and easy, and when you get home to plug it into the trickle charger, you literally just attach it onto that, plug it in at the other end, and job is done. And in the meantime, it just sits quite easily doing that. Yes, I know it's not very tidy, but that does work really pretty well. And I think for a road trip, you can actually get a decent amount of stuff in here. I think you can easily get a few flight trolley bag carry-ons, 2 of those, plus a few soft bags as well. And like I said, you've also got a decent amount of the rear parcel shelf, should you wish to use that too. We've got a grab handle here, so you don't have to close it using the wing or something. Give that a swing, and it shuts down into place. In fact, look at this colour, with the torch shining on it. This is spectacular. It is beautiful. Of course, it's been polished by the guys at Chartwell, but it's looking magnificent. It's such a nice looking car now. Honestly, I mean, it looked good in grey, but this is my colour. I like going blue. And of course, with the key, just to show you, if you lock it, the handles tuck themselves back in, of course, so that it can't be unlocked, and obviously for aero, keeping it more flush, but people can't just open the doors. And then another thing to say, these are actually a flap. If you open this flap, you have the manual key, which obviously is inserted in the top here, and then that's the button you would press to open this up and then lift it if it wasn't working for some reason. As well, you needed emergency access, and obviously a press of the key, and it blinks as well. Just to show you quickly, the carbon mirrors that I also bought. That was another factory option that this car didn't have. So I kind of upgraded it with the options that I wanted to have on the car. My own colour, the carbon sills, the carbon mirrors. And of course, in terms of soundtrack, well, I would have loved to have had the B&O. It was quite hard to find one. And at the end of the day, I'm going to make it extra noisy, and then that will be the solution. Longer term, I will take off the additional German number plate brackets that you have at the front, because this works perfectly to tape on the UK plates. But I do think it looks quite cool for the time being to just display them like that, especially before it's been PPF. Just makes life ever so slightly easier. But I think this car is one of the best looking cars ever. I love the historical link to the 300 SL Gullwing, which is probably the classic I would buy if ever in the position to do so. And then of course, the motorsport successes, a history for the SLS GT3, now found in the road car. A few of the features of this derived into the SLS AMG GT Final Edition, the coupe, and also the roadster that they made of those, like having the spoiler, for example, at the rear. But this is just, I think it's one of the best looking things. It is so cool, and it drives so well too. Of course, we'll talk more about that with opportunities in the future to take it on the Nürburgring, drive it around the Nordschleife, also to take it to VMAX, do some rallies, some road trips, and use this car properly. I don't want to be sparing with it. This is the car that I want to enjoy. I'd been lucky enough to drive a number of them before. I'd been out in the Mercedes fleet car, the one they keep with Mercedes-Benz Classic, as well as a couple of friends' SLS Black Series, and every time, it's been that car since the first time I drove it, that every time I've just said that one day I needed one in the garage. That's why I've referred to it so many times over the last 3 years as one of the dream cars I'd love to purchase, and now it's here, so now I want to use it. I'm going to be keeping a hold of this one forever. No holding back. Let's enjoy it, and of course I will share those experiences as best I can with the videos. So I think that's more or less it then for today. Everything about the SLS Black Series, a bit of an induction tour, taking you all the way around it. I think, yeah, we'll be picking up more things with the car in the future as we head out and about, but really stunning. Of course, I didn't mention that we've got the gold calipers that go with the carbon ceramics. I will be keeping them gold, because the SLS Black Series always has gold calipers. Gold is the colour Mercedes use and AMG use on their carbon ceramics. I am going to be changing the wheels. They will be going silver, or maybe I'll be even going for an aftermarket set. Not entirely decided, but they will be silver as opposed to the black. I know a lot of people like black wheels, but I, with this car, with this colour, would like to make them silver. So I'm going to do it exactly how I would like to go, with the front grille, to go with the fuel filler cap, and also to go with the chrome badges and exhaust around the back as well. So yes, there we have it, the SLS Black Series, a full tour. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed and found this a little bit informative about the car as well. But that is it for this time, guys, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers!